So welcome to the Coaching Culture podcast. My name's Jo Wright, and today I'm joined by the wonderful Caspar Craven. Welcome, Caspar.
Hi, Jo. Fabulous to be here with you.
Thank you. Now, I'd love to introduce you in a way that, how did I come across you? I saw your book on LinkedIn and the title grabbed my attention, Be More Human. I thought, I need to read that book. I read the book and I devoured the book really quite quickly. I loved it, and it made me realise that you're a hugely inspirational and successful person in business, and you've got a lot of fabulous gifts to share with the world of your experiences, of your stories, and it all comes to life in the book. But I wanted to get you as a guest on our podcast because I know you can help so many of our organisations who do listen in to understand the challenges and how we can really help organisations build high-performing teams. Because I think more and more organisations are recognising that they are a system made up of fabulous and diverse, rich teams, but are they tapping into what makes for high performance? And we talk a lot about it here at Coaching Culture, but your book for me absolutely brought it to life with so much colour, richness and humour and stories of your life. I thought, Caspar is on my get on the podcast list, and here you are. So thank you for joining us.
Well, there's some very kind words there, so thank you very much. And it's a privilege to be here. So.
Now I've got a number of questions I'd love to ask you, but let's just go with this as a conversation, see where we go. Any surprises are all good surprises. So, let's just see where we go. But my first question is to help us understand a little bit more about you for people who may not know about Caspar and the special gift you've got to share with the world.
Gosh, okay. So the special gifts, or who am I?
Go with who you are first, and then we'll talk about your superpowers.
Oh gosh, it's always hard to define yourself, isn't it? But I think my obsession is taking on audacious goals, which other people say are impossible, and doing that in a way that is fundamentally more human.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of think I'm relatively contrarian. That everyone says like, well, this is the way things are done. It's like, why done that way? Let's find a different way to do that. So I guess over my career, I've done a number of different things. So I started off in traditional routes. So I trained as a chartered accountant, probably the most painful experience of my life, 3 years of doing that, so absolute numbers. And then 5 years investment banking. And then ever since then, I've been doing entrepreneurial things. And in amongst that, I've sailed twice around the world, once on the world's toughest yacht race, once with my family team, so 3 kids under the age of 10. Whilst also carrying on building businesses at the same time. I got to that point in my career where I came back from my last adventure, and I wrote my first book about that called Where the Magic Happens, which is all about stepping beyond your comfort zone, which of course is where the magic happens. And then I've been on the speaking circuit now for about 5 years, but the first 2 years I was talking about the stories that came out of that. And the thing was that the stories that came out, they were very, very powerful because the insights that came out of it, because basically I'd share lots of mistakes that I've made, because I've made quite a few of them. So I just think it's far more interesting. There's lots of people who tell you how great they are, but I'm quite good at telling people how rubbish I've been at different things. And one of the things about that was that I realised that book, I just looked like some posh bloke who'd been on a boat for a couple of years. Well, okay, well that's interesting, but it also switches a lot of people off, and therefore that stops the messages sort of coming out. So therefore, hence writing Be More Human, which is bringing those principles to life, saying how can we rethink how we work together as teams, both at work and at home, because there's a lot of implicit assumptions that I think we accept. And I think some of those things need to be held up to the light and challenged, because I think there are better ways to do things than what a lot of us do at the moment. I
love the way you just sort of really quickly, even without taking a breath, describing a little bit more who you are, and kind of just throwing in that, and I sailed around the world, once with my family with 3 kids under the age of 10. It was like, throw away, that is phenomenal. I mean, I think we should just stop and pause there, and that you sailed around the world with your family. I mean, people struggle to have 3 kids under the age of 10 living at a home, in a house, taking them to school, never mind sailing them around the world. That must have been. Well,
I struggle with all that stuff as well, by the way. Sort of tantrums and taking to school, and we're not immune to all those different things. So yeah, no, probably the toughest thing I've ever done, actually, that sailing adventure with the kids. But I do think, though, that when you do extreme things, you learn at a far faster rate because you have to. So, by the way, I should mention, when I mention about the sailing thing, most people normally think I'm absolutely insane to take my kids around the world. So let's just call that one out there. That's the usual reaction. And the antidote to that, by the way, is the most insane amount of preparation, 5 years of preparation to cover. And I can talk about some of that, but...
well, you cover some of that in the book, don't you? You cover about like the... what other people said to you, your family, how crazy you were. This can't even happen. And it did, because you set that big, bold goal to make it happen, and you made it happen, which is just phenomenal. And while people say you're insane, I just think it's unbelievably inspirational. And I would imagine you probably had some very scary moments. I certainly don't think some posh bloke just sailing around the world in a boat. This sounds like climbing Mount Everest with 3 kids on your back. That's what I've kind of got in my mind, which just, wow. I mean, what a journey for them as well. I mean, how can normal life even be a thing for them now? It's like, this must be boring in comparison.
Well, it's interesting because when you talk to them about it, and they just think it's the most normal thing in the world because,
that's what they did.
They just lived it. But it's interesting. I mean, a lot of the things that I talk about in Be More Human, I really hope that we have instilled in them, in our kids, some of those values and some of those things that are important. And we may get to talk about this, the whole sort of fixed mindset, growth mindset thing. And for example, we have in our sort of kitchen at home, there's a huge, very big painting which we co-created, which says "We are learners," because I think that's one of the most useful identities, which is another topic we can cover, in terms of really sort of embracing that mindset of curiosity. And so I think that spending that amount of time with our kids and them sort of seeing how we reacted, how we dealt with different situations, I would hope that's one of the key enduring things that they take from it. So.
Phenomenal, and they will thank you when they're old enough to realise what you actually did for them and with them. So let's go on to we talked about superpowers. I mean, I think you've already started touching on some of them, to be fair, to actually achieve what you've already achieved, so much in your life already. What would you two talk about superpowers and about harnessing them? What are yours?
I think I get very excited and energized about the future and what is possible out there, and I don't know. I guess there's something about that everything that I've done, I've been incredibly fortunate to end up being surrounded by just some of the most amazing people. And, all the things that I've done, have not been me doing it. It's just been an amazing team of people that managed to sort of ended up sort of surrounding myself. So maybe there's something in there around bringing some energy, enthusiasm, and looking forward to a picture of tomorrow, which is more exciting, more vivid, more real than the picture that we see of today. So maybe it's tied up in that. So. That's
an inspirational visionary then. And I mean, you and I touched on this before the actual podcast itself, in terms of finding your tribe and surrounding yourself with brilliant people. I think, I think it doesn't, and we'll go on to talk about this in terms of high performing teams, but, I don't think it happens by accident. I do think that, we do attract a certain, if we give out a certain energy, we attract those kind of people back in and then build together. And I do think it's a real skill and a real art in building high performing teams. It doesn't just happen, and you talk about it in your book. You do the analogy of watering a garden and kind of how you grow, and you have to keep going back. And then you talk about the football pitch, kind of, it's like how it gets bigger all the time. And I think about that, how we do things here at Coaching Culture, and it's exactly that. It doesn't just happen one day, but you can start feeling the magic when it does start to happen, and the ingredients that have gone in to make it. We laugh here because somebody called our conference recently a beautiful people stew of fabulous ingredients.
All the words.
Absolutely, people stew. And I thought, you know what, that kind of sums it up. We are fabulous ingredients, and then you bring us all together, all on our own. We're just parts of the stew, but actually bring it all together, and it creates something fabulous and interesting.
I love that. I often think about the analogy, we're cooking an amazing meal, right? Yeah. So what ingredients do we need? And, everyone's got a voice, everyone's got a view. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, let's just make sure we're getting the best of everything coming together here. And when you boil it down to that level, it sounds relatively simple. And of course, it gets more complex because people have emotions and all those sorts of things, and there's different things and mindsets and so on that get in the way. But when it comes back to it, then it's liberating the talents of everybody in your team, isn't it? So.
Absolutely, and that is what I absolutely love about being able to do this ourselves here. Just seeing people grow and develop is just, and me too, all of us, we're just constantly on a journey of growth, which is lovely. And we do talk a lot about the growth mindsets. Fixed mindsets don't kind of, the growth mindset is the only one, for us, and that's what gets the best out of people. So let's talk more about your book. I know that I've shared a little bit already on LinkedIn, and people have already gone out buying it. I've sent it to people on email today. I think it's really valuable. It's just so rich of your life story interspersed with really what matters. But I'd love you to share why you decided to write it. And I know it was following on from Where the Magic Happens, and you decided that sounded like you're a posh bloke sailing around the world, but actually there's some fabulous things in here. Tell us more about why you decided to come to this book, and then tell us more about what's in it.
Thank you. I guess the journey that I've been on has been learning at the extremes and finding a number of things that are embedded truths that we all live by. And what I wanted to do in this book was to call those things out and just to rethink from first principles, how do we go about building our teams that are capable of achieving, big goals, small goals, whatever the goals are in front of you. And I think that, there's some really core messages in there that just go against the conventional wisdom. So one of the first stories, as I go back to the first yacht race that I was on, and the skipper then, she had this saying that a fast team is a happy team, and the logic was that if the boat was going fast, then we'll all be happy and we'll all go even faster. And I've got this picture that I share in my talks, and basically it's just miserable faces, because everyone's just utterly focused on the numbers, and not enjoying the experience, and it's just this numbers fixation. And I realized that the logic absolutely matched the business logic of the day, and still in a lot of places. And I think back to my time, so I trained as a chartered accountant at Baker Tilly and then at KPMG for 5 years. And it was just that numbers-driven culture, and people were the afterthoughts. And it's like, there is a better way than this. And I realized this because when I was had to build the businesses to create the money to go off and do our sailing trip. And I was modeling that whole old world type of things. And I was driving the people in the business ridiculously hard. And basically my business partner, Ed, he basically pulled me to aside and he said, "Caspar, you're being a nightmare." He wasn't quite as polite as that. There were a few more F's in there. And I realized that I was just doing everything that I hated and didn't want to do.
The Wolf of Wall Street in Caspar Craven.
Absolutely. I was like, what am I doing? And it was really painful at the time because I thought that was the right way. So then it's like, okay, well, let's look at how can we do this in a different way with really understanding what's driving each person in the team. Why are they here? Why do they care? And just looking at it from a completely different lens. And it's interesting, by the way, because you realize that these embedded things are all around us. So I'm actually here in my dad's house, and there should be a picture on the wall just here.
What should it have said?
Well, I'm going to take it down. I took it down.
Why?
Because it was this.
Is it lots of money?
It's lots of money. It's like it's an old £5 note and so on. You suddenly realise the programming you have all around you. It's just like it's all about the money rather than about the people. And it's like, no, that's completely the wrong way around. And I think in so much in the working world, we just take it for granted that it's driving for results and people are the afterthoughts, and we don't really think about it. And it's only I noticed just we're coming on here, and it's quite a powerful metaphor, isn't it?
It is indeed. I like the fact that you've actually taken it down. That's quite funny in itself. I would never have noticed it, honestly. I wouldn't.
I would have felt inauthentic if I'd been talking about that and there'd been a whole bunch of like notes behind me. It would just be wrong. So I guess that's one of the cool things that I want to drive out. And then I think one of the other messages is this whole distinction between work life and home life. And I've learned so much from my home life, and I take insights from home life to work and vice versa. And I don't think it's talked about enough in the workplace, and clearly COVID has shone a light on this. But, you know, when I was building my business, not only was my business partner saying I was being a nightmare, my wife was saying the same sort of thing as well, because whatever comes up, right, those patterns follow you around to all different parts of your life, don't they, of course? And, you know, we got to the point where, you know, things were pretty crunchy, and it could have been the end of things between us. And so we actually sort of sat down and said, okay, well, let's rewrite the story of the future that's more exciting than the one we've got of today. Yeah. And so we went through a whole process and a journey. That's one of the things that, you know, I go into a little bit more detail in both books. But it's that and actually there was some research that came out in early 2020. And it revealed that over 2/3 of, they surveyed 500 people, over 2/3 of these high performers at work were experiencing problems in their home life, which is not entirely surprising, but nobody talks about that, right? No. But it's incredibly real. And you have an argument at home and you go to work and it's like, you're not focusing on your work, you're thinking about that, aren't you?
Absolutely.
And you go home and it's like, you know, I'm not saying we should do marriage guidance counselling at work or anything like that, but it's that recognition that we all have a work life and we have a home life, and what we should be equipping people with is the skills to thrive in both areas of their life, not just in the work area of their life. So, you know, one of the 20 principles is make yourself at home. So how do you create your story at home for what you as a family are going to do, or what, you know, we've all got different home lives, they all look different, but, you know, whatever your home life looks like. So I think that's a really important thing that needs to be talked about more.
Because ultimately it all adds up to the one big thing, which is life. It
Absolutely.
all, you know, that equation, work plus home equals life, and that's what matters, doesn't it?
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
And being more human in the workplace, and this is why I kind of grabbed hold of your book, because the title just got me, because I knew that we talk about it a lot, and I recognise that actually being human with people, whether that is fun, direct, nurturing, empathetic, all the things that you would be at home, yes, you can be at work. You know, I always say to people, why do you have a work mask? You know, I've coached people that literally they put on a mask at the minute they walk through the office door, and it's like, well, why? Because I was advised that's what I needed to be. I couldn't bring my true self, and it was like, oh, well, and this was like earlier on in my career, and I was thinking, this doesn't make sense. This is bonkers, in fact.
Absolutely. I mean, like, how exhausting is that as well? I mean, like, I went through it, right? That you're trying to run two personas. It's like there's the real you, which is actually what's driving the show, and then there's the thing. But I mean, that's classic fixed mindset, isn't it? That I have to be this way. Yeah. And back in my corporate world, it's like I had to be this way. It's like, well, how about if I'm just like who I am and just sort of speak the truth? And you know, okay, I'm having a rubbish time at home, and it's like, okay, there it is, right?
Yeah.
But I think that goes right back to fixed mindset.
So obviously, you've picked out the number 20 for the 20 principles of the high-performing team, and I would genuinely encourage people to go out and get the book and read through these principles, because they are fabulous and they all truly resonate. And they're all really important. But if you only had 3 of these to pick, which would your favourite 3 be?
Gosh, that's always a hard one.
Because that's 20 down to 3. That is literally, I'm not saying discount the other 17. I'm just putting who's at the top of the principal leaderboard.
So I think I'm just taking a cue from where we've just started there. I'm probably going to wrap a couple of principles into one.
You're cheating.
It's about the learning how to learn, having the humility. You know, this mantra that you're not good enough yet, and that applies to every single one of us. And therefore, it's like, how do we go about learning and, you know, keeping that learning mindset? It's funny actually. This summer, I signed up to start. I joined a rowing club, which I've never done before, and I'm also doing a course on disruptive innovation at Cambridge University.
Oh, wow.
Why? Because I just want to make sure that I'm just getting fusions of sort of that sort of learning and mindset coming in, and
that's two very different learning experiences.
It almost feels like going back to university actually too.
Does it? That feels like, I love it when constant learning absolutely feeds my soul, to be honest. It absolutely does. But I don't think I could do the rowing. Not on real water.
Well, so I'm out there, I'm wobbling around like an idiot, but I'm quite enjoying it, to be honest. It's quite fun.
There's my fixed mindset. I couldn't do the rowing. I don't have a fixed mindset apart from rowing. I couldn't do that.
There we go.
So that's good.
So learning how to learn, I think, is probably one of the, maybe relearning how to learn, because I think sometimes we forget how to do that. So I think that is definitely a really key one. I think probably I would go to trust next, because if you don't have that trusted, that safe space, then you won't push the boundaries, and pushing the boundaries, failing, and that the only way we're going to tackle the challenges we've got in front of us is trying lots of different things, and most of them won't work. So, and the only way we're going to do that is create, psychological safety is obviously the phrase that comes out. But I think it's creating that trusted space where it's okay to experiment and innovate. It's funny, one of my businesses I like to reference is a company called Simply Business. So they were an insurance company. They started small, ended up growing massive. But one of their core things was they built into the whole culture of experimentation into what they did. So they were running 60 different experiments every week. Anyone could suggest different ideas, but the whole machinery was set up that we can bring these different ideas through. How do we think about it? And they built that from scratch. So again, you only do that if you have a trusted space to do that. So learning how to learn, trust. I think the other one then is probably it has to be the Polestar story. Where are we all going together? And engaging people in that journey. So if it's a small team, co-creating the story together, working out why it's important, and not doing what so many organisations I've worked with where it's a lip service thing. You've got to go deep and understand what each person's connection is. They've certainly got to understand that. So it's those would be my three.
Well, they're brilliant, and again, we did a virtual conference in COVID world, all about trust, to build a trusting culture, and through feedback, conversations, truth, honesty, transparency, all the great things that seem so obvious, but aren't all. And we have a phrase: a culture of trust builds high performance, not the other way around.
Yes, there we go. Yeah, absolutely.
There we go.
I see the echo.
I love it because it's true, isn't it? Because if you're feeling trusted, if you're feeling safe, if you're feeling that you can learn and you can fail, and you're all going in the same direction, it's just all the ingredients for brilliance.
Yes.
Which is fabulous.
I mean, those concerns are still there, aren't they? Whether we speak them or not. And, of course, we don't get into too much. We don't want to share everything, but certainly a lot more than I think people generally do. And, it's by that sharing. This, by the way, where I always share all my mistakes because, we realise is so many of us are doing exactly the same one. So, therefore, let's make it okay to do that. There was some research, actually, from Harvard Business Review a few weeks ago. I think it was leaders who share more about themselves build more trust, which is not terribly surprising, is it?
Totally.
And but it's making it okay to do that. So I definitely encourage leaders to share where they're challenged, where their mistakes are, and that doesn't fit the conventional model of a leader, does it? I mean, it's like they've got to be someone's like, I've got all the answers, here we go, and it's like, really?
But I consider that so old school. That was probably what we experienced in the early 90s, or things are changing, and definitely COVID has shone a light on what really matters. We're constant. This is why we're talking today, because we clearly have got similar thinking on this and what people require from their leaders, and they want them to be more human, because the more human you are and bring that human self to work, whoever you are, it shouldn't matter. Bring out those strengths and in that person, then that can only add to the richness of the people, Stu, I guess.
Absolutely right. I mean, it's we're all humans, aren't we? So
exactly.
that's why I have the on the cover of the book, by the way, the little symbol there is obviously a thumbprint, and it's like if you ever the reasons there, ever you're stuck and not quite sure what to do in a particular situation, just look at that, and look at your thumb, and say, what would a human do? And it's like it's not complex, right? So it's.
Do you know? I didn't even think to ask why there was a thumbprint on there. I knew it was a thumbprint, but I didn't. But absolutely, that's great. Just look at him. We're not a robot.
We've all got one, right? So
we've all got one. Absolutely. Oh, that's brilliant. So you do talk a lot in your book about something that I don't think is talked a lot about, which is the home team and the work team and the similarities. Because at the end of the day, back to the conversation we just had, we're all human. So I just think, well, people are people. So know how to treat people and you won't go far wrong. And that's the same for home versus work. But I think you are the first person who I've experienced who've actually connected those dots in terms of not just talking about work life, home life, because that's been around for a long time, but this is actually about the work team and the home team. And even my husband read this morning when I posted on LinkedIn, he was like, what do you mean by the home team? And he thought I meant my team here at the office with me. I was like, no, they're the work team. You're part of the home team, husband. He said, well, why didn't you just say family? I thought that's probably a good point. Why didn't I just say family? He was sort of challenging me on my LinkedIn post. But that's what you're meaning, isn't it? You know, the dynamics of a family and the dynamics of working in a team. And I often talk about coaching conversations. It's a life skill. It's not just one that you pick up at work and drop when you walk out of an office or whatever. So tell us more about that, because you bring it to life brilliantly in your book.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So, look, I always talk about have the notion in my mind that you have to run things through the filter of the real world, and there is no filter that is more real than your family. And I often talk about this notion of sort of taking ideas from work and applying them at home and vice versa. And to which people often say, "Well, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to go and do a vision statement with my family at home." It's like, well, not in the sense that you're going to go and do it in work, but actually, if you go and create a vision statement, or the language I prefer to use, a story of where you want to go. It is, isn't it? Or you go and create a set of values. If you try and do that at home in a corporate way, nobody will listen to you. But if you try and do it in a human and very real way, which is what we did, so we created a set of values as a family team. And we absolutely lived those values, and they saved us in lots of challenging situations. When you run it through the filter of the real world of family, you really understand what living a set of values means. And that brought values to life for me in a way that I had never been able to access in corporate world. So once we created our set of values at home, I then took them back into the workplace and said, okay, this is what this means. Now I really understand this. And let's create a conversation about this, because that's frankly what it is. It's a conversation. It's not a set of things that live up there on the wall. No. Because, I remember someone saying, our values are on the wall. It's like, well, can you take them down, please?
Yes.
Because, these things are meant to be lived.
Definitely.
So, for example, with the values, we created a set of values with our kids, and basically what were they? They were things which we wanted to do more of together as a family. So we had things like learning, understanding is such a key one, isn't it? Understanding that we all do things for different reasons. And so we ended up creating this great big painting. This is the second painting we've got on the wall at home. And we talked about what do we do when we live these values at their very best. So we went deeper than just sort of saying understanding. It's like, what does that really mean? And then the most important bit is we created a really simple process with how do we bring that to life in the home environment. So what that meant for us is over breakfast every day, so certainly we're on the boat, and we would just do values prizes, and I would sort of go around each of the table and sort of call out each person something they've done well, some small micro detail that probably nobody else had noticed, and I give them stickers for it, and they had values charts and so on. But basically, it was just creating a conversation about the things we wanted to see more of. Because so easy, we can focus on the things we don't want to see more of, and all the problems and the challenges. but that's how you build people, by telling them what they're doing well.
Yeah.
So I did that at home, and then we went and did a similar thing, and we adapted it slightly for the office. It was once a week, and I was giving out bars of chocolate, and then getting other people to go and do it. So I think this fluidity, because, what is a team? A team is a group of people who trust each other. And whether it's a home or work, it's the same concept, right? So a team doesn't just have to be at work. So, so I take concepts and take them from one place and put them in the other place. But again, running it through the filter of the real world, which I think is better for both instances. So.
Brilliant. And in terms of organisations that you either work with now or you've worked with in the past, or you've built your own organisations and businesses successfully, in terms of how much do you think organisations are recognising the value in high-performing teams?
Yeah.
I know it seems like an obvious one, but is it? Are people really, I would want people running out buying your book because it is so brilliant. How much are organisations recognising that they are an organisational system made up of so many wonderful, multiple, diverse people, individuals, teams that actually put them all together, and that's about harnessing the brilliance of them.
So you and I are on a similar mission, right? So
we are.
So here's my take on it. I defy you to find any organisation in the world who would say we don't want to build a high performance team, because every organisation says they want to go and do that. But the question is then, how do you go about doing that? And look, I think it is definitely the clients that we're engaging now with our company. I mean, they are varied and far, from technology to finance to pharmaceutical to all sorts of things. And it's great to see that drive coming through. But what's interesting is that you see different roles inside the business engage with these things different more. So I did a talk for a law firm a few months ago. And I've got my recent book, Big Bold Goals, which basically goes into covers the set of principles. And I had on the call, I had the head of HR and I had the COO of the business, and I held up both books. I haven't got that one here. And I said, I'd like to send you a copy of my book. Which one would you both like? And the COO said, can I have Big Bold Goals? And the HR person said, can I have Big Bold Human, right?
Brilliant.
So it's not entirely surprising. But I think the rubber will hit the road when talent and clients gravitate towards the organizations that genuinely care about people, that genuinely care about purpose. That will be, I think, the thing that drives things. And I think, there's a lot of talking clear in the air at the moment of the great resignation, the needing to invest in people and so on. And the organizations that I notice are the ones who holding on to their talent and attracting talent are the ones who care. Yeah. So it's a pretty powerful commercial. It's not just the right thing to do ethically, it's the best thing to do business-wise as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's been, it's been happening more and more, hasn't it? But COVID has kind of just, it's magnified it onto another level. We found it just here at Coaching Culture. We were talking pre-COVID about building a coaching culture, which are all the same sort of things, authentic leadership, managers, building trust, great conversations, feedback, coaching conversations. And many organisations going, we know we need this. Now it's like, we really need it. We can't manage people the same anymore because people have hybrid working, or they've all been working from home, and actually people needed support. They needed empathy, and I've not known how to show that before. And because all I was doing was talking numbers.
Yeah, no, it's been a bucket of cold water for a lot of people, hasn't it?
The ice bucket challenge, right there.
Yeah, no, really, it has, and it's it's not going away anytime soon, right? Because this is I think is I would say this, wouldn't I? But this is where I see the world is going. So,
which must give you comfort for your kids, to be fair, because I often think about that, building a future where our children will be proud that we've had an input and an impact on the organisations that they're going to be joining, maybe very different from the ones we joined from school, university, whatever, actually making such a deeper difference to the way organisations operate.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. So the vision that just suddenly went into my mind. So I'm down in Devon with my 14-year-old son, and I suddenly imagined what would happen if he went back into like join the accountancy firm that I did back in 1993. It's like, oh my God, it's like I want to go and do that, and it's like what a terrible culture to be in. It's like, ingrained in numbers and fixed mindset, and having to look good rather than actually figuring out the answer to things. So
and also, and this is something I shared the other day on LinkedIn as well, was the number of hours worked is no longer the badge of honour. Whereas actually it used to be, it was kind of who's the latest in the office, who's locking up. Oh wow, still here at 10 o'clock, brilliant, get the pizzas in.
I remember turning up at like sort of 8:45 once, and someone turned us off. Half day is it, Caspar? And it's just like, it's all those types of things, isn't it? It's like it's.
Now, to be fair, if you were a post person, then that would be a fair comment, to be fair, because they're in dead early. But if it was a normal office hours, that's not acceptable. But I think that still does happen, but I think it's happening less.
Yes,
I believe it is.
So I think the answer for a lot of organisations, because I think there's a fear that if a lot of organisations bring on the what I would call the more human approach, then it's like, oh well, that's all soft and fluffy, and that means that our results are going to fall. And that's why I leave the company name is Big Bold Goals. The only way you're going to achieve audacious goals, not 5%, 10%, 5x or 10x, and really push the boundary, is by unleashing the potential of your people. And I think there's this misconception that looking after your people is soft and fluffy. So the COO saying, "Oh, I'll have big bold goals. I don't want to be more human," because that doesn't sound like the right sort of thing. It's like, well, it's coming, isn't it? So.
Definitely, and it is one of those myths that we have to bust. That actually, back to trust leads to performance, not the other way around. And actually having that, our people are the future and the potential, and harnessing the power of them collectively is exactly, I suppose, what Be More Human's about, and high performing teams. But if you had to pick out your greatest learnings out of your whole career, and you've had a fabulous, inspiring career, and it sounds like as we talked before the podcast, we may both be living till we're 120, so we're not even potentially halfway through. What have been your greatest learnings so far? That's question number one, and then I'll move on to another question about the future.
It's funny, I feel like I'm just getting started, to be honest. So I think about greatest learning so far. I think for myself, I would say it's humility, and just to sort of that whole thing, recognize you're not good enough yet. Who do you need to learn from? Where do you need to be around? Super. And so therefore that takes you on a fascinating journey of discovery and curiosity. I think when it comes to teams of people, I think that the fact that humans are both endlessly complex and remarkably simple at the same time. Yeah. What do I mean by that? Endlessly complex because we all have emotions, which is the reason that we do things, even though we often think it isn't. But that is the driver that drives everything. So, and that is, one of the most infuriating and challenging things when you're running a team, trying to understand that. But then the simplicity comes from the fact that once you understand that people only do things for their reasons, not your reasons, it's kind of like the formula to unlock that. And it's like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, why don't I ask them? Because they might not know all the answers, but I'll get further by asking them, and I'll build more trust than if I try and assume that they're working to my model of the world, because they won't be, because we're all different. Yeah. So I think that's probably one of my most enduring insights.
So that's interesting, because I suppose there's a level of understanding the brain and understanding the power of the mind, the psychology behind each individual. And I think something that doesn't seem to be spoken too much about in organisations is the likes of neuroscience and psychology, but actually the two together are so powerful. Once you recognise what's going on in somebody's brain and actually what's going on inside them based on their background, their history, their environment, their experiences, you really start to build up a true picture, don't you, of the why.
It really is. I mean, it's funny. One of the I go down a lot of different interesting rabbit holes. The one I've been going down for the past few months is a massive deep dive into Richard Dawkins' world, so the evolutionary biologist.
Yeah, brilliant.
And just reflecting on that the human animal reacts and responds in a certain way, and that we have a certain set of chemistry, and it's all understandable once you think of ourselves as an animal. It's like, well, why are we doing that? And it's like, okay, well, there's all these different things here, which takes you into the realms of psychology and neuroscience and so on. So it's just a different lens. So
it totally is. So fascinating learnings. I love the humility. In fact, we didn't get to speak. We may have to do another podcast where we talk about all your mistakes from your career that you said that you want to talk about. That could be quite an entertaining one.
Yeah, we haven't got long enough for that.
We could both share stories of career mistakes. How long has everybody got? Brilliant. Well, that's what it's about, though.
They're far more interesting, aren't they?
Well, we'll do Jo and Caspar part 2. Let's talk about all our mistakes. How long has everybody got to listen to them? And what about any nuggets of advice for people? Whether it's somebody sat at the board thinking, right, we're putting the strategy together. Say strategy, right, Jo? The strategy together, or actually it's a leader of a team and they're thinking, I don't even know where to start here. I'm struggling. I've got a few challenges going on. What would your advice be to leaders in organisations who are thinking, my team are doing stuff, but they're just not high performing, or my organisation isn't? Where would they go?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think so I mean, it's. I'd love to give you just one silver magic bullet, but it's going to be a few, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think there's a very simple question that I ask people, and it's this past, present, future lens, which we'll come across in the book.
Yep.
Where do we spend our time focused? And I always think that to get a team aligned, to get a team excited, is saying, okay, what's that story of the future that's going to be different? And I naturally get drawn towards the future, but not everybody does. Some people get drawn towards the past, some people get drawn towards the present. So it's going out there into the future and saying, let's co-create that story out there, which is exciting.
Yeah.
And that is and you do that by listening to each other, and why people care about that, because you have to get everybody pointing in the same direction. To start with, and then I think after that it's sort of sitting down with each person. It's like, well, why does that matter to you? Why do you care? How are we going to start moving you to the journey where what are the skills that you need to develop next? Because I truly believe that everything that we're doing is wrapped up in a set of skills, and if you're here and you need to be here, it's like, okay, what's the next skill you need to learn, right? Yeah. That's closing the gap, isn't it? But start in the future. What do you need? Where do you need to be? Yeah. And then what are the skills gaps that are going to close that? Not what are the quarterly numbers that are going to close that, but what are the skills gaps that are going to close that?
And I'd probably add to that, actually, in terms of skills gap. I often talk about mindset. Actually, what's the mindset? And you and I touched on it again pre-podcast about a number of different mindsets. But what's the mindset? What are the behaviours we need to get us there as well? I often feel that skills are something you can go out and acquire, but actually working on mindset, back to the comment we made before about the psychology and kind of really understanding what's going on inside somebody's mind and head, let's work on what that is, because that's showing up in their behaviours every day.
Absolutely. I probably cheated a little bit, because I reframed thinking about the growth mindset as developing the skill set of that, or belief as a skill set. So I think we're saying the same thing, actually.
We are indeed. And in terms of so you talk very much, you're drawn to the future. Mm-hmm. What is your vision of the future then? So however far that may be.
Yes.
We talked at the conference. I did a vision session at our conference only last week, and I was talking about, even just in 10 years' time, what could that be? And how even now we don't know what the roles of tomorrow are going to be. We just haven't got it defined, but we can't just wait for it to happen. We've got to be ready for it, and the way to be ready for it is to actually, build our teams, nurture the people, avoid this great resignation, and actually really, the risk of not caring for your people and being more human is too great. Yeah. But talk to me about the future. What is this future that you're drawn to? I'm intrigued.
So look, I imagine a world where the teams of people can come together, and whatever you dream, whatever you can imagine, and to think as expansively, think as audaciously as you can, to say, what are these things that we need to do? Because we need that thinking, right? When you listen to the climate change challenges, when you look at all the different challenges, social media, and how that's hijacking our brains, there are huge challenges that we face today. And I would love to have imagine a world where people feel capable of taking on those challenges, but together as a team, where there's humanity right at the core of that, where people actually care about the people they work with, and it's doing something that truly makes a difference. So, I hope that, out of all the mistakes that I've made, the painful lessons that I've gone through, there's some useful things there which can help other people on their journey. There is nothing more satisfying than hearing a story or a message of someone who has done something different as a result of the ideas that I've shared. Yeah. For me, that's absolute fulfillment. So therefore, it's just like, well, okay, let's just dial it up to the maximum level that we can and do it as much as possible.
It's interesting that you say that, because we looked at some Accenture research recently, and one of their 3 core areas that they believe we need to focus on for the future is absolutely about leading with humanity. One of them was about digital fluency, but the other one was it's not all about technology. It's actually, you've got to couple it here with leading with humanity. So, you're definitely thinking the same as the organisations who are getting it right and who are working towards that future where it is more about the humanity. It isn't the Wolf of Wall Street back to the 1990s and the things that we've probably experienced, and bringing them all together will really bring fabulous teams working together and everything that you talk about. So I think that's a future that we should aspire to, but also absolutely start making happen now.
Absolutely. Well, I'm in huge admiration of the mission, the organisation that you're building, because it's putting the same messages out there, isn't it? It's doing things in a better way, isn't it?
It is, and it does. I think we've probably both learned from mistakes, but also learned from. I've learned some great things from great leaders that I've experienced in my career, but also the not so great. And actually, it's how can you learn and then reflect on actually what has made that person or that team be better than other teams I've worked with, and the ingredients are all there, and we've all got it to be able to give as well, I think, to make a difference in organisations and teams.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, actually, you mentioned the reflection there. That would have been a contender for a piece of wisdom that I wish anyone to have, is to take that time to do that reflection piece. It was Ray Dalio who shared the formula: pain plus reflection equals progress. That whatever that pain point is, that follows you around relentlessly, and from home to work and work to home, and it's like, okay, well, stop, just stare at that a minute and just sort of figure out what's really going on there.
You mentioned that in your book, don't you? That's ringing a bell. Yeah, absolutely. I remember from when I read it in the Scottish Highlands as I was there devouring the book. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would love to share today? Obviously, our Coaching Culture listeners will be listening to you because the message will totally resonate. But is there anything else you'd love to share today that you feel that you want to share, you've missed out, or I've not asked the question clearly? Anything at all?
That's very kind of you to ask. I think I think we've covered a lot of good topics there. It's so I think that's been a good outing for a lot of the ideas. I guess the end thing is, like, if anyone wants a conversation, then I love just sort of having conversations about this exactly as we're doing now, because it's important, right? And these things build momentum. So.
Well, we've covered so much. I loved your learning how to learn, trust. Having the Polestar story, all going in the same direction, and I think it's so important if people will get hold of your book, because it's so rich, it's so fun to read. We're actually featuring it in our magazine this time as well. Yep, you're going to be out there even more, so you can see just how much of a fan I am of the content, and I think it's you bring to life something that it doesn't have to be rocket science. It's about being more human and dialing up that. You can't go far wrong. And now I know what the thumbprint actually means, or the big fingerprint. That I love that. But you're right. Just we are human. We're not robots. And let's do more of that. Thank you so much. So how can people contact you if they do want to get in contact with you for a conversation?
Yeah, no, fantastic. So look, thank you. My name's relatively unique, Caspar Craven. So Google me, but CasparCraven.com or bigboldgoals.com. So there's the two organisations. Well, one's me, obviously. So
one's you. We know who you are. Well, that's fabulous. Thank you so much, Caspar, for taking the time today. I've really enjoyed our conversations. We've covered so many rich things, and I'm sure people will get inspiration and draw inspiration from your stories and your expertise. So again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Been a pleasure. Thank you, Jo.
Thank you. And for those of you who want to listen again, listening to more Coaching Culture podcasts, because we have some more fabulous guests lined up. So thank you.